I think I'm going to start now, and yeah, if people join, hopefully they will. If not, well, this will be a very intimate session, and hopefully there'll be quite a bit of Q&A afterwards, and hopefully this will be more interactive then. With that said, we are super excited to have Neha Nagardi here with us today. She's a public speaking coach specializing in brand storytelling. So she founded Storytellers Table, a speaking academy where leaders get certified in speaking and training in AI-driven communications. As a TEDx speaker with over 10 years of stage experience, they has interviewed hundreds of people, uncovering stories that resonate. As a former journalist with WMLB Atlanta Radio, radio host, she brings a sharp eye for brand storytelling, and her marketing expertise spans across various Fortune 100 companies, from T-Mobile to Starbucks and Turner Broadcasting. So it's that. I turn it over to Neha.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I am thrilled to be here with you all today. Thank you so much for inviting me. The person, Eunice Kim, that invited me, unfortunately, has dealing with an emergency with her son, but we shall carry on. And I am super grateful to you for spending some of your most valuable commodity, which is time, here with us today. So we are going to have a great conversation today about your brand and your story and the leadership impact that creates. Now, there's so much jargon around these two keywords, brand and story. So for our conversation today, I want to put some context around it and maybe reframe it for you all kind of going forward as well. So when you think about the word brand, for our conversation, your personal brand is your reputation. It's your reputation. What is being said about you, what is when you're in the room, and then more importantly, what is being said about you when you're not in the room, okay? So that is brand. Now, when we think about story, oh my gosh, there's a whole industry around the word story. But story, in the most fundamental definition I can give you, is story is truth well told. Truth well told, right? So when we talk about this conversation about brand in your story, we are going to get to the sweet intersecting spot there. And that sweet spot is called your leadership impact. Your leadership impact. So when you put together your reputation and you put together your personal stories or other people's stories that you can also share that are well told, that is going to be your leadership impact. And that is what we're going to dive into today. How do you define your brand story? How do you refine it? And then most importantly, how do you share it? All right. Okay. So I am going to share my screen, which is a presentation. So here we go. Here we go. All right. Awesome. Yay. Can everybody see this? Yeah? All right, awesome. Yes. Okay, so we're gonna couple things before we dive into our conversation today, all right? I'm gonna use some words and some phrases that I would love for you to start rethinking and reshifting in your mind. First one, public speaking. Now, when we think about public speaking, there's, things that come to mind, like a speaker on a stage with microphones and spotlights. And yes, there is some of that in public speaking. But foundationally, public speaking is having a one-on-one conversation. It is having a one-to-two conversation or a one-to-few conversation. And that is what public speaking is, with the daily conversations that we have. And when we have the energy exchange from a person speaking to a person receiving that message. Okay, so another thing a term we're going to talk about is story. Now, we've talked about this before, and there's a whole industry around it. But for our conversation, and hopefully for going forward, story is truth well told. your personal experiences that are told well for others, right? Okay, and the word brand. Brand is your reputation. What is perceived about you, and what, more importantly, what do you want perceived about you? So by the end of our conversation today, we are going to know how to define your brand story, how to then say what it is consistently to everybody, and more importantly, what kind of impact and leadership impact that can create for you and everyone around you. All right. So I'd love to keep this interactive. I know we have an intimate crew today, but at the end of our conversation, there is going to be time for question and answers. And I would love for you to ask some questions, and let's get into it. Let's have a discussion about all the things that are important, and the things that are on your heart and your mind and your soul. And let's talk about your brand story and how you want to elevate that. All right. Okay. If everybody good, let's jump on in. All right, so imagine you're scrolling through LinkedIn. You see two profiles that catch your eye. They have the same sort of location, maybe same industries, perhaps even some of the same experiences, but one of them stands out. Not because of something that's changed who they are, it's because of their story. The power that draws you in is all about the personal brand and the stories that they have put in through their profile that captured your attention, right? So if you have a personal brand, it's not what you just do, it's how you make people feel. It's the connections you can make from listing all the different things that you have on your resume or your profile, right? I've coached dozens of people through my public coaching academy, and here's what I've found out. Once you say something, it doesn't have any kind of relevancy unless there's an emotional connection behind it. Unless there's an emotional connection about it. All right. So your story isn't a resume, right? It's not a list of, downloadable things or even achievements. Once those achievements are there, it's awesome. It's what makes those achievements mean something. So here's the thing. When you're in a meeting, when you are giving a presentation, when you have something to say, if you want something to convert to an action, information flow always has to go like this. Here's the message, the information. It has to elicit an emotional reaction, which then converts to action. Information will always flow like this if you want it to convert to action. All right? Okay. So, what is a brand? What is a brand? Let's talk about what is a brand. So, and how do you shape what it is that you aligns? How would you shape where it aligns to your leadership and your values? All right. So most people, when they think of a brand, think of logos and taglines and things like that. But it's not a clever slogan on a t-shirt. It is something that you carry in every room when you walk in. It's how you make people feel, how you build that trust with people, and how you show up when no one is watching. Your brand is leadership in motion. All right, so marketing expert and best-selling author Seth Godin, he puts brand in this way. A brand is a set of expectations, memories, stories, and relationships that taken together account for a consumer's behavior to choose one product or service over another. But I like to take that one step further for our conversation today. A personal brand is the story that people tell themselves about you even when you're not in the room. So have y'all heard of this concept about, it's called the Cooley concept, right? Cooley concept. It's Charles Horton Cooley said this. He said, I am not what you think I am, and I am not what I think I am. I am what I think you think I am. I mean, that's deep, okay? That's how most people operate, right? Your sense of self is shaped of how people perceive you to be, not by our internal thoughts. But here's the thing that makes it powerful, right? You get to influence your story through your words, through your actions, through your presence, and yes, Yes, foundationally through your storytelling. So I want you to think about this. Your resume is a list of achievements, but your story, it's your story that gives it its meaning. It's what how makes you people connect with you. It's how they remember you. It's how they refer to you, how they follow you, right? It's what Seth Godin says. It's not the bullet points, it's the emotional story that lingers. So think about this. If you were going to the grocery store and you had a list of things that you wanted, I want milk and I want carrots and I want yogurt and lettuce and apples. Okay, all 5 things. You walk into the grocery store, you don't remember a single thing that you needed. But this is how, if you had a grocery store list and you had a story around that list. Well, I need milk because the carrots go well with the milk, and I need something red because the red helps with the orange, and I need something to balance the white. Whatever story you make up in your head, you walk into the grocery store, and I promise you're going to remember each and every one of those grocery items. Same thing when you think about your resume. It is a list, but if you want people to start literally connecting to your list, you must get it to connect through a story. All right. So I discovered the power of this when I was working at Starbucks corporate. I was recruited to work there in their international marketing department. And when I worked at Starbucks, Charles Schultz was their CEO. And when I was there, they were rolling out Tazo tea, and they were doing consumer behavior meetings. And I was getting called into a meeting, and I thought it was just a regular meeting. I looked through the list of invitees. There was your regular amount of people. And I was like, okay, so I walked into this meeting, and unannounced, Charles Schultz was in this meeting, this consumer behavior meeting around Tazo tea. And I was not prepared to have our CEO be in this meeting. So, like it goes, like it happens, he turns to me and he asks me a question about consumer behavior and tea. And here's the thing, I have always had been a storyteller. I've always, invented stories, thought in stories. I've always had stories in my mind. Ever since I was a very young child, I've used stories and storytelling to, help me find my way in life, help me belong, because I was always othered growing up in the South. And storytelling to me was my way to, make believable was something that I couldn't make sense out of. So when Charles Schultz asked me a question, I went into my bank of stories, and I told him about how my mom makes chai at home and how we'd sit together on this little round formica table, and she shares stories from her childhood. So I said to him, for consumers, Mr. Schultz, drinking tea, especially chai, it's like going down memory lane. It's not just a beverage, it's a portal to connection. And then I could see how his expression changed. I could see how it resonated with them. This simple, authentic story made more impact, I think, than any kind of market research could have. Your story, it is the thread that connects the pivotal moments in your experiences, connects to all those that you're speaking with. So you have to start thinking of your brand as your reputation and using your stories to connect all those that you're speaking to, and how to talk about who you are, and more importantly, how you want to be perceived to be. All right. So think about some of these real life examples, right? So Inder Nui is the former PepsiCo chief CEO. And she redefined leadership by weaving her values, which are strategy and empathy and cultural connection, into her personal brand. She said a story about how she used to write thank you notes to the parents of her executive. Now imagine, as a parent, now I'm a parent, I have 2 kids. If I got a letter from the CEO of the person they're working for saying thank you to me for raising such a good kid, that's what she did. That is what she did, right? She wrote a letter that said, I see the whole person behind this executive. Now that is a power of a very strong brand, right? She is known to be an empathetic leader. All right, think about Lena Nair. Lena Nair is the CEO of Chanel. Lena has spent 30 years prior to her being chosen as the CEO at Unilever. 30 years from a churn and burn kind of consumer branding company to Chanel. Now, Chanel sometimes takes up to 10 years to come out with a new product, which costs a lot more than a Unilever $2 bottle of shampoo. All right. But here's the thing about Lena, she has built her personal brand all about people first leadership. I have read a lot about Lena's leadership and also seen a lot of her broadcast interviews. And here's a story I will share about Lena that which she has shared. She is one of the first women to go to her engineering college in her town from India. She was one of the first women to come up through the ranks of Unilever. As she was directing one of their manufacturing plants in a town in India, she decided that she wanted to understand the people she was leading. So overnight, she goes into the plant factory because Unilever is a 24/7 factory manufacturing company. And she walks in and she gets down into where the factory workers are working and starts working alongside them. Now, that is a personal brand. When you are working alongside the factory workers, asking them questions, getting in there and understanding foundationally who they are and what they need, she grew in her personal brand. She's known to be vulnerable, she's known to be curious, and she's known to be an inclusive leader. That is the power of a personal brand. All right, one other example I want to share with you, Dr. Vivek Murthy, the former U.S. Surgeon General of the U.S. He's Ivy League educated, like you all are, deeply credentialed, but what makes him unforgettable? What makes him unforgettable is his voice. When he took the stage on a TED stage, he didn't start with stats or he didn't start with achievements. He started with a story about his father's clinic, about making a human connection, and about loneliness, right? About loneliness. He made himself vulnerable. In a role that could be all about policies, he chose empathy. And that choice built trust, not just the policymakers, but also with us in the public, right? So think about what could that mean, what kind of branding that means for him. That is branding done right, a very clear, consistent story told with heart. All right. So now, once you are able to align your brand story with your values, right? Whatever your values are, and you start aligning your brand story with that, how do you start talking about your brand story? One of the things that when I'm coaching clients is this is what I ask them. What is your story? And I know it's a big loaded question and I kind of want to hear what they have to say just so then it's a good starting point for us. And this is what I get when I ask, what is your story? I get this look, this deer in headlights look, number one. Then they start looking up, hoping that their story is somewhere written up in the sky. Then they look down sometimes, maybe my story is written down here. And then they look up and look at me and say, oh, I don't have a story. And of course you have a story. And this is the methodology that I help to get them to start unlocking their story. All right. Stories, again, is your personal experiences that you want to amplify and share with the world. The methodology I use is called hook, heart, home. Hook, heart, home. All right. So the hook. What are you opening your story with, right? How are you getting their attention? How are you making them not only listen to what you're saying, but also lean in, all right? So here's a hack. Here's a hack for you. So when you are talking, you're going to give out a lot of nonverbal cues, not a lot of them, and subconsciously or not. And I coach on this. But if you want people to lean in to your conversation, and leaning is very good, tilt your head a little bit. Tilt your head to the right, tilt your head to the left. When you tilt your head, you're inviting people to trust you, right? And it's a very, very good way for you to start in opening your dialogue, start in opening your message, all right? So tilting your head is very good. All right, okay, so make them lean into your story. All right, say something that's going to help them stop the scroll. Say something that's going to get their mind to open up. Say what it is that you actually want them to pay attention to. Start with a bold statement. Start with a personal question. Start with a story about what you've done in your childhood or in college, or a challenge point that you got over. Something that's going to open and connect with them. All right, example is Howard Schultz. Howard Schultz is the former CEO of Starbucks. But did you guys all know that he grew up in the public housing projects of Brooklyn, New York? Yep, grew up very poor and grew up in a very underprivileged household. But here's how that has influenced him in his personal brand and opening up his hook. His belief is that every single person, the company they work for, should take care of them. Because he has seen too much in his when he was growing up in Brooklyn, how factories and work and companies did not take care of their people. So one of his motivating beliefs, it was the company has to take care of its people. That's why he was one of the first companies to start giving part-time employees full healthcare benefits, right? So his brand, his opening is all about leading with empathy, redefining what responsibility looks like in an American corporation. So when you hook your audience emotionally, you also get to them mentally. And that is the most important thing, because remember we talked about how information flows. You have your message, you have it to get it trigger an emotion, which then converts to action, goes back to your message. All right. So now let's talk about heart. Heart is where you let people in. You have to invite people into your story. You can't just say, well, this happened and then the other thing happened and everything's great now. There's nothing there for us to hang on to, right? So share why the moment matters to you. What shaped your values? What challenged your beliefs? What lit a fire up in your heart? Reveal something real. Reveal a challenge, reveal the change that happened, reveal the turning point. What is the belief that helped shape you, right? So here's another example. Mary Barra. Mary Barra is the former CEO of General Motors. She started as a co-op student. Her first job at General Motors was as a secretary, and she worked herself up to the ranks. She became the first female CEO of a major global automaker. Yeah, right? So when GM faced a crisis, she rebuilt trust, not with flash, but with focus. That's what she's known for. She's prioritized safety, transparency, and long-term accountability. And she does it all because there's not a single job within General Motors that she doesn't know how to do, because she's done every single one of them in order to work herself up to CEO. Her brand is all about resilient leadership, but she's always makes sure she gets to the heart of her story, because the heart of her story is that she has worked through the ranks. She knows every single job and every single person's responsibility. There's not a single one that she doesn't know or has not done, right? That is part of her story, and that's where the heart of her story is. The heart is where trust lives. Right? You want to help people get them to trust you, that you are a credible source. In order to do that, you've got to bring them into the heart of your story. This is where you let people in, share the why, this moment, why it's important to you, what helped you shape your values, what challenged your beliefs, what lit a fire. Let your voice show, not just your title, right? People first, person first, expert second. Always show that we're in any situation where you are person first, expert second. That's where the connection happens. All right. When you're telling a story, bring us home. Bring us home. Don't forget to tie it all up in a knot for us, in a tidy little bow. This is where you get to go be honest about the part that you're sharing. It's where your audience starts to really feel it. So I was at an event this past week called the Atlanta AI Conference, and a speaker was talking, and he had a very interesting name to his company, something you would remember, but it had absolutely nothing to do with technology or AI. So he started telling this story about the way this company was named, but then it was like nothing. Like there was no understanding or no connection as to what happened and to why they named that company what they named it. And I was like, wait. So I found the gentleman after after the talk, and I was like, wait, can you please tell me, can you finish your story about why you the company was named what it is? Because I was left hanging. So don't do that. All right, don't do that. Close your story when you are talking, when you are saying this is the opening, this is the heart, this is what I've learned, and this is what you can learn too, right? That's the closing. What do you want them to walk away with thinking, feeling, or just even doing differently? What is that moment of impact that you want when you tell a good story? It's not about giving something away, it's giving them something they can hold on to. What do you want them to hold on to? What is the call to action at the end of that? And maybe you're giving them a new perspective on things, and that's fine. Or maybe it's a push that they've needed. Maybe it's a new inspiration. Maybe you want them to send an email to somebody. All of that is good and well. But don't forget to close the loop on it. Don't forget, because it's that shared sense of, yes, exactly, we can do it. Is that message lands just right? Is that everybody in the room can say, yes, we've done it, right? So somebody that does this really, really well is Satya Nadella. Satya Nadella is the CEO of Microsoft, right? Before he became CEO, Microsoft was known as a culture of cutthroatness and internal silos. He shifted that tone. He shifted that by leading with empathy. When he gave his first all hands-on deck message, his keynote address in that, he opened with this tagline: empowering every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And he opened that sharing some vulnerabilities. When you invite people to share your vulnerability, that's when you're taking them home in the message that you are giving to them and that you want them to take away with. So hook gets your ears and heart gets your trust. Home makes the story stick, right? So in my corporate career, as was mentioned, I started out at Turner Broadcasting in Atlanta, and then I got married and we moved to Seattle because my husband got into the University of Washington's MBA program, and I started working for T-Mobile marketing, and then I got recruited by Starbucks. But I started having children, and I decided to leave corporate America, and I became a trained journalist. One of the highlights in my journalism career was getting an interview with a Nobel Peace Prize winner named Kailash Satyarthi. Kailash Satyarthi almost single-handedly rewrote India's human labor laws. And I was so enamored by this conversation that he and I had for 2 hours, and I wrote this article about him for a magazine, that I was like, this needs to be broadcasted to a bigger place. So then and there, I decided that I was going to have my own radio show. Now, how many people did I know in the Atlanta radio market? That many, 0. But here's part of my brand, okay? Part of my personal brand, that I am a storyteller at heart, and that I am insatiably curious. Insatiably curious. So what did I do? This is pre-COVID, and it's a little cringeworthy, but I walked into many radio stations and I was like, hi, I want to have my own radio show here. And, let me say, by being insatiably curious, by asking the questions, it led me on a path to the next right step. And eventually it led me to be a producer for some person that was looking for somebody for some help on a show. He taught me all the ropes about being on the radio. 6 months later, I had my own show. My show was about interviewing, a talk show about interviewing celebrities on the social good they created using their platform. And it was wonderful. And it was a lot to some much critical fanfare. And it was a wonderful way to, really bringing home the story about how to, use what you know already inside you, your values, to be, either curious, motivated, brave, all of those things, and using it to taking the right next step forward. right? The right next step forward. And if you were to take that right next step forward, is how the results happen one step at a time. So, you know, when you are thinking about getting your story together and how you want to tell people, how you want to start sharing it, use this methodology. Hook, hard, home. Every time with every story. All right, so we've talked about your brand, how it aligns to your values. We talked about how to put it together or put your story together within your brand. Now, let's talk about how you are going to build your brand. How do you talk about it? How you build it up, right? Remember, your brand is much more than your skills. It's how people perceive you. And how do you actively start shaping that perception? The number one way to do that is owning the narrative. Own the narrative. Decide, number one, that starts with decide what you want to be known for. What do you want to be known for out there, right? Because if you are not out there shaping your brand, remember, other people are going to shape their brand for you. And the probability is very high that that brand is not the truth that you want out there. So let's say, do you want to be known as a problem solver? Do you want to be known as a person that builds trust? Do you want to be known as a person that is an empathetic kind of leader? Decide how it is aligning to your values, all right? And after you decide that, you gotta have to start owning the narrative. So somebody that does this really well is Carla Harris. Carla Harris is an executive at Morgan Stanley, and she worked up through the ranks. But she says this, and she is a phenomenal speaker because I've heard her talk, and she says this on a stage. She started her career, and she wanted to be known as a tough leader, a tough leader. So she would walk into every meeting, and she'd be like, yes, I looked at those reports, I looked at those numbers, and you know what? I'm going to have to be tough on this, and I'm going to have to see a 2% increase in order for us to get to a 5% increase at the quarter's end. Or she would have water cooler conversations talking about, well, I had to make a tough decision today, and it was, this or this. Every single time she would start talking about how she's a tough, no-nonsense leader. And she says this 6 weeks later, word started getting out that Carla is a tough, she's one tough leader. She really likes to get out there and make those tough decisions, right? Same thing applies to you. You've got to know what you want to stand for, and you've got to start owning the narrative that every single meeting, presentation, interaction, water cooler conversation, all of it has to revolve around you owning the narrative, right? Number two, which leads me to showing up consistently. Showing up consistently. Having your actions shape your brand. All right, so let's say, for example, you want to be known as a strategic thinker. You want to be known as a visionary, a person that sees the impact of something that can make 5 years, 10 years down the line, right? You are going to go into a meeting and start talking about this. Well, I was, looking at the numbers, and I see the impact that that's going to create now. But my goodness, the impact that it can create if we bring in X, Y, and Z, it can be astronomical. To start using these words every single place you go. Strategy, strategic, long-term thinking. When you show up consistently, this is not a one-off thing. When you show up consistently, it's like when people bring it up here and also start talking about it with their mouth, right? Number three, use language that matches your brand. How many times consistently do we see that, people are talking, but that's not lining up to what they want to be looked as, by other people? If you want to be seen as a decisive leader, you don't use words like maybe or I think, right? You're going to use much more definitive type of statements. If you want to be seen as a collaborative leader, you are going to start building and bridging people together. That's how people are going to be seeing you, because your language is now matching what you want to be known for as your personal brand. Curate your digital presence. Right? We've talked about your LinkedIn profile, but after we get done with our conversation, look at your LinkedIn profile. Does it match what you want it to be known about you, right? Do the words, the phrases, the things that it says, is it what you want to be said about you when you are in the room? And again, when you are not in the room, right? And if it isn't, start changing it. And my first one is leverage your story. Leverage your story. Use the story. Use your personal experiences to reinforce your brand. If you want to be seen as a strategic long-term thinker, go back and think of a way that you went and did that in your past and start bringing that up. Maybe you were in college, at university, and you started a rowing club or rowing chapter, and the impact of that is still being felt today. That is a great story that you need to be bringing up in meetings and presentations to talk about, to reinforce consistently your brand. All right. So remember, your brand is what you say, what you do, and how you show up every single day. Right. So now we talked about building your brand and how it's important to talk about it and be consistent with it, because if you're not doing it, it's being shaped by somebody else. So what is the way that you are going to build your brand up every single day? The number one way to do this is through speaking. Through speaking. The number one way to build your personal brand is through speaking. And let me tell you about Warren Buffett. So Warren Buffett says the best investment he's ever made wasn't in the stock market. It was in the public speaking course he completed to Dale Carnegie. Now, there's people out there that say that have been inside Warren Buffett's office. I have not. That says out of all the accolades and awards and gifts that he's been given, the only framed award that he has is his certificate of his completion of the Dale Carnegie public speaking course, right? Because he knows knowing how to speak with clarity gave him the confidence to lead. Having that confidence to lead comes through clarity, and you must know how to speak your brand consistently, because that's where your speaking turns your stories into legacy, right? All right, so speaking is where your ideas gain visibility and where your differences turn into your power. Telling your story is how you begin to define, claim, and celebrate what makes you different. There's too often that we are often, shunned into all being the same. If we are different, there's some shame or being shunned about it. Well, actually, there's the celebration. Your uniqueness is your story. That's the story. That's what makes you the person that you are. There's all this data out there about these identical twins, right? Two people born at the same time in the same household, but you ask them about their 5-year-old birthday party and you'll have two very completely different experiences. Same thing. Your experiences come through your unique point of view, and you've got to be able to claim that and share that. This is why we've created, Storytellers Table Speaking Academy, not for the people that want to be influencers, but for leaders who are already doing the work, but want to tell it in a much more braver and clearer manner. We teach the frameworks, we give the feedback, but most importantly, we help you refine your story that already lives inside you. Those differences, those lenses that we want to hear about, that tells all the others what makes you an important brand ambassador of your own brand. We certify speakers that speak well. Now, what I often get asked is when people are speaking and building their story, can they use AI to help build their story? So yes, absolutely. Use AI as a tool to help you build your story, but use it wisely, all right? AI can help you brainstorm, draft, and polish, but with your story, your insight, and your voice, that cannot be automated. Trust in that. So here's some tools that you can use. Use ChatGPT, of course, it helps you brainstorm story arcs and talking points. There's an app called Yodlee or Udly, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, or there's another one called ORAI. It helps you practice your speech delivery. There's also Notion AI. Notion AI helps you organize your brand and your content across different platforms. And these are just a couple of the tools that you can use to use AI in your to help you kind of arc your story and understand how to share it with others. But remember, AI is your assistant and not the author. That's why, spaces like us, like the, Storytellers Table Speaking Academy, helps you kind of refine and speak it out loud. All right. Okay. So I want to save some time for question and answers. So here's our closing takeaways that I want you to walk away with, right? When you speak, you do a lot more than share information. You shape an identity. You don't need a viral moment. You need a clear message, a human voice, and the courage to share your story. And that identity becomes your brand. Okay, that identity becomes your brand. You already have a brand. The question is whether you're shaping it intentionally. Are you shaping it intentionally? And then number two, your story is your most powerful leadership tool. It is the most powerful thing that you have in your arsenal. When told well, it builds trust and it opens doors. And the third takeaway I want you to take away from today is speaking transforms your brand. It is the number one tool to build your brand. And your brand, it deserves all the momentum, because that's where you create your leadership impact, right? You master your voice and you multiply your impact. So as we wrap things up today and we open this up for question and answer, I want you to ask yourself these three questions as you're thinking about this. What is it that you want to be known for? What is it that you want to be known for? What story are you telling without even realizing it? What story are you saying or telling without even realizing that it's out there in the world? And the third one that I want you to think about and reflect upon is, how do you want people to feel when they experience your leadership? All right? Okay. Thank you so much. And please, let's ask some questions. And here's my email. Feel free to reach out to me at any time.
Thank you so much, Neha. That was very inspiring. I think I learned a lot that I have to now process, absorb, and put into motion.
Oh, good. Good.
What's that? Yeah, anyone who has a question, just help yourself get off mute and then just ask it. This was such a small group today. I'm not going to run any set processes.
That was really inspiring. I don't have a specific question yet, and I'm still, like you're saying, processing it. But it was really interesting to think about how we are unconsciously, we all have a brand. Like, it's not this dirty word, and like and everything we're doing is shaping that. And then how can we use it for good, and how can we use it for the inspiring things we want to do? I feel like you gave us a lot of great tools for that. Sometimes I don't know what it is I really want to do. And I'm curious if you have, it's kind of a different topic, but I'm curious if you.
Well, here's the first thing I would say is listen to your whispers. The whispers are there and they're guiding you, right? The whispers are guiding you, saying, so when you are doing something and there's a whisper that comes to you saying, God, I didn't really like that, or something didn't feel good to me about that, or I don't want to do that again. Listen to that. Take note of that. Because maybe you don't know exactly what you might want to do now, but you know exactly all the things you don't want to do. Maybe that helps you clarify what you do want to do. Yeah?
Yep. Awesome.
Yeah. So what do you do now? You're a radiologist? Is that what I heard? Radiologist?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. But I do a lot of teaching, and I work, I do a lot of like interdisciplinary sort of like communication with like a lot of different teams. And so I resonated with a lot of what you're saying, but I also do a lot of teaching on both at Emory and then on the national level. And so part of my brand is being like an expert in like liver and pancreas. And then part of it is like, mentoring and coaching and talking to young people and teaching. And so I do think I have a brand, but it's hard to like wrap my mind around like how to use it in the best way possible, or what do I want to do with it?
Yeah. Well, I think you're doing a really good job of it now. And I mean, I have mad respect for radiologists. My father is battling multiple myeloma right now. So, I think it's great that you're mentoring young people to be better. And, even if you just deliver a better bedside message, I will say from my father's experience, like, most wonderful, caring, like nurses and doctors at the Levine. My father's in Charlotte, North Carolina, at the Levine Center. Mad love to them. So yeah, keep that. Keep that part of your brand, right? That teaching these young people how to have amazing bedside manner, because we all need that human to human connection. So.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks so much for this talk. I thought this was excellent. I was really looking forward to it. I'm also from the Brown crew here. I guess I have a question for you. In the times that we're in right now, and with the attack on DEI, for those of us that may be in leadership positions related to DEI, right, where that is very much a part of our brand, where our work is related to addressing healthcare disparities among underserved populations. And my personal brand or story is that I grew up without health insurance in America. I got most of my care at the health department. I'm now the leader of the health department, right? So how do you, I guess, continue with that brand, that story, while also facing the DEI attacks, and then while also maybe trying not to alienate those that are against anything related to disparities or underserved?
Well, I mean, I still think the work you're doing is so important, so pivotal, right? And maybe just changing the content instead of the context, right? Instead of you maybe using words more like bridging, like I am helping to make bridges, create bridges between those that may not have the health services to those that can help provide it for them, right? That sounds, it's the same work, but I mean, just to get and I was just talking to Jenny before everyone started coming. I feel like when everything's up in the air, like I feel like everything is just in a state of dishevel right now and upheaval, that things eventually will have to come down and calm down. And so please continue the work. Number one, please continue the work, but maybe use different words just to get through this time. That and I love that. I've heard many. I work with a lot of nonprofits, and some of the things they're starting to do is do that, right? Just change the word a little bit, or change the phrase a little bit. Still continuing the work, still applying for the grants. So I would say try that. See if that helps. But do not stop doing the good work, okay? Please.
Thank you.
Sure. Jenny, I don't know how much time we have left. It's about 12:56, so maybe one more question, maybe?
If there's no one on the call that has a question, I have one, so I guess I'll go. So Neha, you were saying on the importance of how in every single conversation when you're speaking, you should always emphasize your one brand. But I think in other leadership workshops, what at least I've always been told is that you always have to structure your message and your brand to the audience. So how do you kind of bridge those two?
Well, I think that you can always captivate your audience through the lens that you speak from, right? So you're going to captivate your audience with the emotional connection that you're going to make with them. And that emotional connection, I promise you, is going to come through the story that you are able to tell them. And it doesn't matter whether it's an audience of Fortune 100 CEOs or it's an audience of 5-year-old kindergartners. Making an emotional connection is your key. That is the key. There is no way around that. I will say, last night, I was at an event with the King of Pops. You know, King of Pops, the brand, the co-founders. Yeah, right. The co-founders are two brothers, Steve Carson and Nick Carson. They were there speaking. And they were saying the same thing. You know, they were testing out their popsicle flavors with different audiences. So first they go into Spanx, right? Spanx, you've got executives and all of these wonderful people that are tasting and trying the flavors, and they were trying to get feedback. Well, they take the same exact flavors to a class of kindergartners. And I tell you, and this is what they said, there was no faster way to get an emotional response than kindergartners, right? But they got the same reaction. But here's the thing, it was the same reaction across the board. This flavor is great, this flavor is not so great, right? But the thing is, what they shared, how they shared it, the connections they were able to make with those different audiences through the different stories they were able to tell, that's how you change the levers, right? Same message, different audience, but the story they told was different. So that's what my thing is, right? Tell a different story and how to get the audience to engage with you, right?
Well, with that, I think we're at time. Thank you so much, Neha, for giving up that hour today, and everyone else on the call as well for joining us. And I hope to see you at a future event soon.
Yes, and thank you all so much for your time, and please do reach out to me if ever that you just have a question, or you've got something speaking that that's coming up, and you had like, hey, can you give me a quick answer to this? I'm happy to help anytime.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Happy
Lisa.
Friday.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jenny.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.